Well, the suspected gunman Cole Allen will appear in a federal courtroom tomorrow. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche says it was likely President Trump that he was targeting, along with administration officials during last night's shooting. Let's bring in Bill Melugin, who's got more on this. I mean, it really is kind of a fascinating thing, Bill. You and I were both there. Yeah. You were at the same table John Roberts was talking earlier. You were at the same table that John Roberts was at. And for us to get over there so we could kind of coalesce and figure out what was going on and a coverage plan and so forth took a fair bit because the tables were very close together.
Oh, yeah, we were all packed in there like sardines. Wild experience, and I think we all felt like 3 to 5 seconds of panic as we were figuring out what was going on in that room. But in the meantime, the White House is telling Fox News that law enforcement has recovered a manifesto belonging to that alleged shooter in which he said he wanted to target Trump administration officials. He also apparently had all sorts of anti-Trump and anti-Christian content on his social media profiles. Now, multiple federal law enforcement sources tell us that the suspect has been ID'd as 31-year-old Cole Allen of Torrance, California. We were told he was initially talking to law enforcement after his arrest, admitting his intent was to target the Trump administration, but he has since stopped talking and is no longer being cooperative. Now, those sources tell Fox that Cole checked into the Washington Hilton Hotel on Friday, the day before he allegedly carried out this attack, and Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche explained on Fox this morning how it appears he got to D.C. from California.
What we have learned, and what they've learned just overnight, is that it appears he traveled from Los Angeles through Chicago to Washington, D.C., and it appears he traveled by train during both legs of that trip. As far as motivation, we are still looking into that. It appears he was targeting members of the administration, but I say that generally because that's all we know right now. We don't have any specifics beyond that.
Now, the White House tells Fox that Allen had previously attended a No Kings protest in California, and his family had actually notified police about a manifesto he had sent to them prior to this attack. His sister reportedly told investigators during an interview that he frequently made radical statements and planned to, quote, do something. Now, last night, Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. attorney here in Washington, announced that Cole has been charged with using a firearm during a crime of violence as well as assault on a federal officer with a dangerous weapon. He is scheduled to make his first appearance in federal court sometime tomorrow, Trace.
The unclear thing for me, Bill, and maybe you have information because I haven't been able to find it, is they apparently...
Let me actually start saving my... Yeah, I'm gonna start recording this. Yeah, crazy.
Family notified police in New London, Connecticut. Yes. Right? So New London, Connecticut, the family does not live in New London, Connecticut. We don't know. I mean, we're saying, well, like the president said with Jackie Heinrich earlier, he's like, well, listen, I wish the New London police had contacted. We don't know that they didn't. We don't know that they didn't.
We also don't know exactly what the connection to New London is, if that's where one family member was or something. We'll wait to find that out. But we do at least know that apparently the brother contacted law enforcement and felt something was off, and that the sister who's being interviewed right now has said that this was a guy who was making some statements that were jumping out to us that were pretty outlandish, and that he was plotting something, quote, planning to do something about the issues facing the country. So they had enough red flags to the point where they contacted law enforcement. We don't know how soon it was before the dinner last night, but somebody reached out and felt something was wrong, and then we saw what happened last night.
So you had a guy who was in the Caltech Christian Club, right? You had one of his former...
Joining me now, Ty Cobb, former White House attorney during Trump's first term. It's good to see you again, Ty. So you have this ballroom. It is still subject to litigation. Would a judge reviewing this case take last night's incident into consideration, do you think?
Not at all. We've never heard this argument before for the ballroom. Certainly the tragic incident last night involving political violence, which sadly is part of our culture in large part because of the gun issues that your guest Gary Kennedy highlighted. Instead of talking about the real problems like guns, Trump has turned the incident into an advertisement for his vanity project. This ballroom is not being created to establish a safe place for him to celebrate himself. And the courts, have stopped it in large part, although it's proceeding under scrutiny at this stage of the game, and because of the fact that Trump ignored the law. He believes, as Stephen Miller and Stephen Vaught tell him every day, that he can do whatever he wants, and that's just not true. As we saw with tariffs, as we've seen with multiple deployments of ICE and the National Guard, the courts have stepped up and said, no, Mr. President, you can't do anything you want. There are laws to be followed. And here, the issues are: is congressional approval required? Were adequate environmental and regulatory considerations addressed? And they weren't. So I think at some point, this will be reined in a little bit. It'll certainly be slowed down. Congress would likely, at least before the midterms, approve it for the president in a tight vote between the Mikey Johnson-controlled House and the Democrats. But at the same time, if that's to be the case, it needs to be done.
So Donald Trump is saying that the ballroom that he's building would have been a safer location. But the question to you, would a private event hosted by, as last night was, the White House Correspondents Association...
That's so stupid, Trump, with the ballroom thing. The stupid ballroom, I don't think it would have not helped. I don't know why Trump is even mentioning the ballroom. Let me see, my thing is peaking. Yeah, you guys can hear me. Just don't know, maybe...
Would it actually have access to and be held in the White House ballroom? I mean, would this ballroom be used by non-governmental or non-White House events? Could any group rent the ballroom for the right price?
Highly unlikely, although if the price is paid to Trump and his family, perhaps so, as we've seen with the $4 billion to which he's enriched himself over the last 15 months. But no, and it's not likely to be it's not likely to ever be used for a private event to the extent it is. It'll be a significant mega donor to the Republican Party to the extent it ever does get built. And with regard to the safety, this is him trying to merely pressure the courts into ignoring the law, as he's tried in connection with many other issues. Threatening judges and trying to intimidate judges, trying to do anything to assimilate power within the presidency. And now he's taking over the White House Correspondents Association, dictating when they can have their event, insisting that it be rescheduled. All things that should be up to them independently. And frankly, why they would even do that for a man who has spent 15 months trying to destroy the First Amendment and criticized journalists, kicked him out of the Pentagon, and had his allies take over CBS and other media outlets. I have no idea, what level of complicity the White House Correspondents Group feels.
So can I ask you, based on your knowledge of the president, it has been suggested that the president's implying, hey, look, this would be the safest place, it's the best place for a president to be, or at least the best place for me to be if we had an event in the White House ballroom. That being said, that would indicate the president wouldn't get out in the public, would no longer be out there with Americans, touching base with constituents, losing a sense of touch with people if he were to harness himself in for all these events and stay safe at the White House. What's your thought on that? Does the president enjoy getting out there and talking to people, or would he rather have a sort of northern Mar-a-Lago set up for himself?
Oh, he'd much rather have Northern Mar-a-Lago and have people come to him and celebrate him on his turf. But he does like getting out. He loves spectacle. Anything that gives him the sense that he's all powerful. He does enjoy that. But we already see a little bit of that, Alex. I mean, he does hunker down in Mar-a-Lago. And keep in mind that many in his cabinet and many high-ranking officials hide on Coast Guard and military facilities now where they live. And Todd Blanche had to move his family to the bubble of nearby Mar-a-Lago and move him out of New York. So I think you see between the Noams of the world, the Hegseths, the others who are now hunkering down in secure facilities that this is an administration that is hiding from the people, and it's in large part because they're taking advantage of us all.
Ty Cobb, always good to talk with you, which means I'll see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Can't wait. Thank you, Alex.
At approximately 8:36 tonight, an individual charged a U.S. Secret Service checkpoint here in the lobby area of the hotel. He was armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and multiple knives. As he ran through that checkpoint, members of law enforcement from the United States Secret Service intercepted that individual. This is a very preliminary investigation at this point. We do know that law enforcement exchanged gunfire with the individual. We do know that a U.S. Secret Service uniformed division officer was struck in his vest. He was transported to a local hospital for treatment. He seems to be in good spirits at this time. The suspect in this case, he was not struck by gunfire. It does appear he is a lone actor, a lone gunman. There does not appear to be any sort of danger to the public at this time.
The defendant is being charged with 2 counts, 924C, using a firearm during a crime of violence, and a second crime under 111, which is assault on a federal officer using a dangerous weapon. But make no mistake, there will be many more charges based upon the information that we are learning in this very fluid situation.
I'm gonna look up. Oh yeah, that's respect.
question, how did he get weapons into the proximity of what would become a secure area? Granted, he didn't breach the magnetometer checkpoints, but a lot of weapons were pre-staged. How does that happen? And those are all the questions that are going to come out in the days ahead, but it does really bring up an important question. Are the current practices of the Secret Service current enough to keep the leader of the free world, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, safe? And that's what they're going to have to figure out.
I want to ask you, because in this room was the president, the first lady, but also the vice president, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, other members of the cabinet potentially in line for the president if something, God forbid, happens. How does that change Secret Service? How are they working with multiple principals in a similar location?
Well, the good news is when you have all those people together, you do have additional resources. You'll have Capitol Police. Depending on the cabinet member, you'll have protective details with them. So as a site agent, that means you have more resources than you normally would have. But here's the challenge. They often don't come in and do the advance work, which, Andy, that's the success of security. Getting there early, making sure that all of these types of contingencies are planned for, and then hoping and praying that you've got everything in place. And last night, it wasn't in place. Thank God for hero agents. But that shouldn't be the measure. We can't count on near misses. We have to count on guaranteed wins in the Secret Service. There's no room for error.
And I want to ask you, because you mentioned obviously barreling through that area, and this is the video posted by the president running at full speed past these magnetometers. And this wasn't even outside the hotel. This was just outside of the ballroom as a chaotic scene as they did apprehend this individual, put him in custody. In terms of what you're seeing there, and they were unsure at that moment that this was a lone wolf that we soon learn about later, the 31-year-old man from California. What's going through the head of law enforcement, of Secret Service in that moment, unsure if there are multiple people involved?
Well, that's a great question, Andy, because let me tell you, it happens in split seconds. I know guys that were on the detail during the Reagan assassination attempt, and they consistently said it happens in quarter seconds. That's how we train in the Secret Service, to respond as quickly as possible. But the issue is you shouldn't have to respond. That guy was able to equip himself with weapons and sprint towards a checkpoint, and that should have been observed way before that event. We often say in the Secret Service, our security layers start way out, even to the road, but with protective intelligence, counter surveillance, all those things. So whatever happened last night, I just think we need to rethink protection, because remember, Andy, these were amateurs, the first three, Butler and Palm Beach, and then this one last night. I'm more concerned for the growing threat, given a war, given internal strife, and certainly this reflects that we've got challenges from within the country where violence is sprouting up and targeting our elected leaders.
And just talking about the layers of security there, potentially out to the road, I do want to put up this post from Reese Gorman, one of the reporters potentially in the room, saying he was talking to a GOP lawmaker at that White House Correspondents' Dinner last night, right after the shooting, who was appalled at the lack of security entering the Washington Hilton, saying there were 0 magnetometers or security checkpoints prior to entering the Washington Hilton. Is that something that Secret Service will have to address, moving that layer further out, even for an event at a massive venue like the Washington Hilton?
Yeah, Andy, that's a very important point, because if you think of Butler, remember, the crux was quote unquote inside of the perimeter. How does that happen? And
yeah, that's the whole thing. I don't understand how they're getting these just the Butler guy, the Pennsylvania Butler guy, he managed to get on top of a roof and managed to almost assassinate unalive Trump. It's kind of crazy that how somebody gets so close to Trump. Well, not that close, but with a rifle that close. Yeah, just Yeah, it's just kind of crazy. Just my thoughts.
We do need to rethink. Let me tell you, I'm a Secret Service agent. I love the Secret Service, but now all those things we would have laughed at a decade ago. But let me tell you, it's getting very serious very fast. And there are thousands of people behind this guy that want to do the same thing. And so the Secret Service has a daunting mission. But the bottom line, we have to protect the elected leaders that we, the people, have put into office.
How much sway does the Secret Service have? Because we know upcoming, we have the World Cup, we have different venues like the America's 250. We know President Trump wants to host F1 UFC at the White House. How much sway does Secret Service have in where the president can go?
Well, any of them live right now? I don't think none of them are live. Is this live? Nah. These spam isn't live.
Man who officials say fired shots after charging through the security checkpoint at Saturday's White House Correspondents' Dinner is still in police custody, and he has been identified as 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen of California. A source familiar with the matter tells CNN that the suspect's family alerted police about the writings indicating anti-Trump ideology. Jen Sullivan has the details on what happened.
Serious security concerns are being raised after this surveillance video shows an armed man charging through a Secret Service checkpoint at the Washington Hilton Saturday night before opening fire. This as hundreds of journalists and high-profile politicians, including the president and first lady, gathered in a nearby ballroom for the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner.
It does appear the suspect was targeting members of the administration.
Welcome back. Law enforcement is on the scene in California, digging through the home of suspected White House Correspondents' Dinner shooter Cole Allen. Christina Coleman.
Hi, yeah, so we've been out here all day. I can tell you we've seen FBI officials out here on the street of the alleged gunman going door to door, checking with neighbors. I heard one of them saying that they were looking for Ring camera video. So, you know, they're doing their due diligence, being very meticulous about this investigation. I also talked to a number of neighbors out here, and they tell me they are just completely shocked by what happened. You know, they heard about the shooting that happened, you know, there in the lobby of that hotel, but did not expect for the alleged shooter to be living here in their neighborhood. So they are coming to terms with that. What we know about the suspect, 31 years old, identified as Cole Allen, lives here in Torrance, here in LA County, about 20 miles southwest of downtown LA. Has a very extensive background, educational background, was big into tech, graduated from Caltech, studied mechanical engineering, and yet his life is going to take a dramatic turn if he is found guilty of the charges he will likely be facing. Again, authorities say that he took a train from LA to Chicago and then from Chicago to DC to carry out this attack. And so fortunately no one was seriously injured, but again, authorities are really working hard investigating what led up to this incident.
Christina, I know his parents, I believe, have talked to investigators at some level. He also has a brother and I believe a sister, at least what we've seen. Do you know if the family or he have got a lawyer that's out front saying, hey, we'll put out a statement or anything of that nature yet?
You know, I have not seen that so far. I will say, you know, our Matt Fenn, with his incredible and great reporting, you know, he says that the parents are cooperating. We do believe that they lived here in this home with Cole Allen. Also, White House officials, they say that several of his family members have talked to authorities, including his brother, who said that Allen had an alleged manifesto that he had sent to family members. So apparently the brother said that after the incident last night. Then also the sister, she talked to authorities, and she said that, you know, he would make some comments, some rhetoric alluding to needing to fix the issues that are occurring here today. So whatever that means. Also, the White House saying that he was in a group called the Wide Awakes. I went to the group's website. The group describes itself as an open source network who radically reimagines the future through creative collaboration. So I'm sure investigators are going to be looking into all of that. Back to you.
Christina Coleman, thank you so much. Kevin, I'll bring it up to you first. We've heard a lot in the last hour and a half even. Background on who he is, a little bit more. It's colored in. We don't know much about his family. We don't know what his family's political views are or anything like that. And, you know, they're innocent people, so that makes sense. But it does help color in how he got there. And I think that is really kind of the million-dollar question. Is how do you go from what we know about him to what we saw happen last night?
And that's what's most troubling, in particular, when you consider this person was a teacher, someone who you would imagine.
Yeah, I don't really want to talk about it, but there's a lot of people saying, well, he had a manifesto, so I guess we know that he was trying to target Trump. But there's a lot of people online saying that it was on Reddit and Twitter, which I'm not on Twitter, but on X, I meant to say whatever Elon Musk platform, that's saying that it was state. I don't really want to talk about that stuff because, one, I don't want my channel to get maybe, yeah, but there was a lot of people saying it was staged or it was a false flag, you know. You never know with that type of stuff. I don't want to bring anything, yeah, just kind of bizarre, you know. I doubt this was staged. I don't know. We have to see. Yeah, I just seen Tim Miller talk about Tim Miller from the Bulwark said that, oh, we can't think, yeah, there's just a lot of crazy people. There's just a lot of crazy people. I'm not gonna even speculate that this was staged because there are a lot of crazy people. Yeah, I'm gonna go use the restroom, guys. I don't know if I don't think anybody's even watching the stream, but yeah, I'm gonna go use the restroom, so I'm gonna hide my camera.
an educator would be balanced and would want the very best for all people, even if you disagree with them politically. Unfortunately, radicalization is a real thing. You heard Nicole Parker talking about it, and I think that's really where this investigation will likely lead. How did this happen? How long ago did this happen? The Post tell us a lot, and we'll see where we go from here.
Tom, there are a lot of questions, of course, still out there. What's the biggest question that you haven't seen answered?
Well, I have a lot of questions that aren't answered, of course. A lot of it has to do with just the security of the building itself. But I want to know, too, when you comb through the social media, you comb through who he was talking to, you comb through the interactions with the family, what they knew, when they knew it. It also takes me back to the assassination of Charlie Kirk and some of the writings and some of the communications between him and his roommate. That takes me back there. So I'm sure we're going to find out more in the coming days and the coming weeks, certainly. But a lot of unanswered questions. Just go back to somebody who was very smart, sound like they had a good job, they had a family, and now, for all intents and purposes, his life is going to be over because of the fallout of this and what he did. So a lot of questions there as to how you get there.
Alicia, I think we also around this table and to a certain extent kind of empathize.
As an extraordinary last 12, 13, 14, 15 hours in this country. One thing that I'm disturbed by as we woke up this morning is seeing folks on the internet say that this was a false flag, that we are basically all in cahoots to say that this was staged. And I think as someone who, for all of us, who was in the room, who had to jump on the ground, who had to text our family and friends and tell them that we were okay, calling our moms, like so many people in this country have done for decades, to see people say those kinds of things, it is frustrating, it's disturbing, it shows the issues that we have to try and fix in this country. And I think nothing taught us anything better than the importance of journalists being on the ground, in the room, for moments of historic significance than last night, us all dropping to the ground, and literally like 5 seconds later, phones up and around so that the American people get a first-hand account of what's happening in a room with the most powerful people, including the President and Vice President of the United States. Brad.
I saw something that, the false flag, this was staged, is a big thing in MAGA world, but I'm hearing that on my social media pages from people on the left also, thinking that this was staged, that this was a false flag, that this was something being done on purpose. And hearing you speak, Eugene, if it's coming from the right and it's coming from the left, these conspiracy theories, it says to me that there feels to be a lack of trust in this country.
And empathy.
And if people can't see that a room full of journalists ran out of the room, got in front of cameras, got on their platforms, telling people what happened in the room, if you cannot trust what we are telling you, I don't think that's an issue of journalism. That is an issue of American society. And so if you're watching The Weekend, you've been watching us, you've watched us now for 4 hours, I hope you know that we are telling you, because we were in the room, we were sitting right next to each other. Jackie was right next to me, to my left, and Eugene was to her left. We're telling you that what happened last night was real.
I will never forget a conversation I had with my first boss in journalism, Chris Isham of CBS News. He was the first person to conduct an interview with Osama bin Laden. He had dear friends who died in the attacks on 9/11. And I remember sort of gently asking him what he thought of some of the conspiracy theories around 9/11. And I will never actually forget the look of pain in his eyes that I even broached that question. And even just having this conversation with Ashley actually is such a testament to why it is so important to have primary sources, people who are on the ground, to interview them, to talk with them. Everyone likes to be an armchair quarterback at the end of the day. Tons of people looking at videos wondering, oh, why was Kash Patel the last person to leave the ballroom? Did Secret Service mess up? Did they forget about him? No, actually, Ashley was sitting with him. She said his instincts were to stay, to be on the ground, to play FBI director.
He was operating bravely in that moment, actually.
And very quickly, there is a connection between conspiracy theorizing and political violence. Statistically significant. Harvard Kennedy School has done a bunch of studies on this, most recently December 2024, after the November 2024 election. Again, it's statistically significant.
Yeah, I don't even want to look at the comments. It's just garbage.
Can't tell you anything about him. I just see him coming and going. I assume going to work or school. I don't know what he does.
So no interactions with other parents?
The parents I'm friends with. I'm friends with his dad. They're very solid, peaceful, good people in the community.
Yeah.
So the only part I saw, because I was at a neighbor's house watching what was going on so I could get back into my house, was I saw the SWAT team show up. There was, I don't know if you guys were here, but there was like 25, 30 SWAT members with a big SWAT truck out front. So we were waiting for them to do that, clear it, make sure that they felt like everything was safe, so that we could get back into our house. After that, then I think they started searching through the house, but I went to sleep after that.
So what can you tell us about this guy?
I don't really know anything about him. I know he lives there. I just know what I've read in the media coverage. I'm friends with his father, and his parents are very peaceful, very good people. But I don't know much about him.
So how long has he lived here?
I was given the estimate of 2 years. It could be longer. It could be 3 or 4. So I did recognize him, yeah. But I was aware of like all the motion first. So that, I mean, I knew something was going on.
So, but you never talked to him?
I can't remember ever talking to him. I mean, I don't even know that I really said hi to him. He kind of kept to himself.
Do you know that he was like teacher of the month?
No.
You didn't know?
I didn't know. I didn't know he was a teacher, to be honest with you.
How does he seem? I mean, like a nice guy, quiet guy?
He's kept to himself, very quiet. Yeah.
There's a lot of FBIs. They said so.
I'm ABC 10 News reporter Ryan Hill here in Torrance, California. We're here on Gramercy Avenue. This is not too far off the 5 freeway. Now, this is the address that ABC News is saying that is the suspect's home over here in Torrance, California. You can take a look over here. It is a who's who of national and LA media over here. And this home over here in 1915 is the address that ABC News is saying is the suspect's home.
I'm in a neighborhood in Torrance, California, and those lights that you see behind me, that is from the FBI as well as the Torrance Police Department. And the spotlight that you see on that home, that is the home that they have traced to Cole Allen, the 31-year-old man who authorities took. I'm in a neighborhood in Torrance, California, and those lights that you see behind me, that
I'm not surprised at all. Again, if he had not been inside the hotel already, and let's say he wouldn't have made it through the exterior ingress door, perhaps he would have decided to shoot people at the doorway. But because he was already inside, he had at least one terrain feature ahead of anybody else from the public that would have had access. And quite frankly, I don't believe that he was able to get that close. I've been in that hotel. That's the infamous hotel where Reagan was shot in 1981. The United States Secret Service knows that hotel very well. They've set up this layer of security and the security plan for decades now. And I think that last night's security plan went according to the way it was supposed to. Again, I don't think that he was ever in any imminent danger. And I think that the men and women of the Secret Service did a very good job at addressing his erratic behavior.
I actually posted on social media that the security screen that I was very it was pretty odd. And I recorded as I was leaving and evacuating that the screening was only downstairs, which was pretty weird for covering Trump several times and covering, everyone was there. It was like the State of the Union.
Of events outside of the White House, F1, potentially UFC as well. Does this change anything you are hearing from the White House or what their plans are in the future? Because this potentially is the third such attack in less than 2 years.
I would sure hope so. I haven't heard exactly what they're going to do, but I mean, I'm pretty certain that if they are going to have it in the next 30 days, as Trump said, that they probably are going to have a completely different type of security.
What other information do you want to know? Because we got information, the individual Cole Allen, a 31-year-old from California, potentially a teacher that got there by train. What other information do you hope to learn about the suspect, what their anti-Trump social media trail is? What other information do you want to know?
I mean,